What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. ICast 2022. We're here at the New Canoe booth. I got Jordan May right next to me. Lives in the area down here, down in Florida. Utilizes the Unlimited quite a bit in the saltwater setting, both inland and offshore. So we're going to get his take on it, how he utilizes it. So, I mean, Jordan, why don't you give us a little background? Because we've never had you on the actual podcast. So, like, where you're from, the type of fishing you do, and how long you've been in a new canoe.
How's it going, guys? So I actually grew up in New England, was a striper fisherman, a mate on a striper boat my whole life, did a lot of commercial fishing, scallops, oysters, stuff like that. We did a lot of bass fishing up there. I've been fishing out of a new canoe now for about 15 years. Used to have bass boats, used to do a lot of tournaments in those, and when we got moved over, I started doing the kayak fishing. Messed around with it, actually used it more for hunting up there than I ever did. A lot of duck hunting, stuff like that. And when I finally decided that I was done fishing in New England, I came to Florida because that's the promised land of fishing, right? That's where you go. And I got back into a kayak down here. I started realizing that I really liked the saltwater game down here. I really liked flats fishing. So a lot of the water I was looking at, the fish was so shallow that I felt the kayak was going to be the better way to go with it. So, yeah, started doing that, and then I fell in love with red fishing. And basically 90% of the time I'm in it, I'm looking for redfish. And we started messing around, doing a little bit offshore. You know, some videos, me and Everett went out. We got some mahi, got some nice tuna, did some bottom fishing. So it's been really good. And when the Unlimited came out, I was super happy with it. I was always an F12 guy. I ran a Pursuit for a while, but basically always went back to the F12, and I absolutely loved that platform. Did a lot of fly fishing. So the openness of it would allow me to not get my line snagged on everything constantly. I could take all the little hooks off and basically bare bones the boat. But when the Unlimited came out, I was really excited about the drainage, because offshore you can take, especially punching through the surf, take a lot of water in. And I mean, that thing just drains so well. It's literally like the driest boat I've ever been in. Like that thing can fill with water and it's just gone. So punching through the surf with it, that became probably once the Unlimited came out is when I actually started actively fishing the offshore end of things. It just was a much better boat for me. And my biggest struggle down here has always been the wind and the currents a lot of times. So you can get into some strong winds, especially in that afternoon. Sight fishing, the wind would just kill you on it. And you got to go a long distance sometimes. So once I was very fair weather to it for quite a bit. And now that we got the EPS system on it, the Newport Vessels EPS, I don't have to worry about it because, for instance, there's a spot I fish. It's about 3 miles to the other side. If I get a strong east wind, I'd have to paddle against that to go over there to find a leeward side of some flats to start looking. So, kind of start to, you don't know if you really want to do it. So, but now even just bite through the chop with it, fire that thing up. I really like how I can know my range with it, know my battery percentage. I'm not constantly guessing. I had run some pretty basic tiller systems with a deep cycle marine in the back. Man, you'd be out still 2 miles away sometimes and out of power, So
yeah. No, it's interesting, man. Like I just experienced my first saltwater trip. I just told you that, and that was Monday, and I've never fished tide before, right? I live in the Midwest. We don't have tides up there, so it was interesting because the guide's like, I know there's always snook up here, but the tide had gone out, so it was low tide, and there was some areas up in there where we could see fish busting, but we couldn't get to them because we were in our big 22-foot boat. And I was like, this is where the kayak comes into play. So it's interesting. Like, maybe talk a little bit about the tides and how that works with you in a kayak and stuff.
So, every spot's a little different, but like you said, saltwater fishing, 90% of it's very tide dependent. I mean, people say, let's go fish this spot. And I say it all the time, especially with my red fishing. I got locked into the tide. Let's wake up at 6 a.m. and go. No, let's get up at 10 and go. They're like, man, it's midday. I'm like, right, but their tide's not right at 6 a.m. So they're not going to bite anyways. Right. So we do a lot of that, but there's a lot of tidal areas that, like you said, you can't get to by boat, and they'll flood sometimes, and these fish can get in. There's drainage pipes that can allow them in and out of there. And actually, a lot of these fish just live back there, and they'll deal with that low tide. They'll find a deep hole, but some of the best spots I fish down here, I've never seen a person in because they get. It might be 100-foot drag through a trail that you had to beat yourself on and then relaunch the kayak. But, and then you get to these areas and they're maybe the size of this booth. You poke through a little hole in the mangroves and there's just these lakes back there, just these giant lakes. And they're very, very productive. And you can just never get there any other way. So
right on, man. It's super cool. Like I said, it's super fascinating to me because I don't deal with it or see it all the time. And, it was interesting because I could see how effective a kayak would be versus, that boat setting. For somebody that's like maybe never fished saltwater inland or offshore out of a kayak, like what would be some recommendations that you give? I'm sure one of them is going to be watching those tides and stuff, but like as far as gear, things they should watch out for and stuff like that, man.
Yeah, I mean, always carry an anchor with you, especially dealing with tide. You ever get in trouble or not? I don't want to say in trouble, but you ever get tired or anything? I mean, I've been in some before the EPS. I was in some situations where, you're paddling to get back against this tide and this wind comes in the same direction. And you can't take a break because you stop and you've lost all your ground. So always carry something to anchor with and make sure that you have enough rope or whatever your anchor system may be to accommodate the water you're in. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing to me because it can be very, very daunting situation. Sometimes you don't have a lee side to get to, anything like that. And obviously you always have your PDF with you. Tide can be, dangerous, heavy currents and stuff like that. That's really it. I mean, just be smart about where you're going, kind of know your ground. We have all kinds of sources now with Google Earth and everything that you can really plan, a good route. And then local knowledge. I mean, people, especially when it comes to safety, generally don't shy away from, giving you the information you need to say, hey, don't go down there at high tide because you'll never get back at low. You'll get stuck. I mean, you can get stuck places. The tide goes down too far and, drag with a kayak, you can usually drag it over, but you can easily get stuck somewhere and it's 6 hours before you get a chance to get back out. So.
And that's funny because we were talking with the guide. We were out Monday and she said a sailboat got stuck back in a channel. And they tried to help the guy get off there, couldn't get him off, and he had to basically wait for high tide. So it makes sense. But like that anchor thing, like I've talked to a couple guys on the team and other podcasts that talk about saltwater, and they've never mentioned the anchor with the rope. And that's a great thing. Like, I mean, it's a no-brainer, you would think, but I mean, I wouldn't have thought of that. Yeah. So
the nice thing about Inshore down here is you're pretty close to everything typically. Inshore river fishing, especially down the Indian River Lagoon where I do a lot of it. There's houses, there's businesses. marinas and everything typically are not that far to reach. But yeah, and then down here, water. Always carry extra water. I mean, I've been in some situations where you get really far back and it gets hot down here quick and you dehydrate quick. So that's one thing I forgot one day, my water, and I'll never do that again. That's always top priority.
There's one thing I learned about Florida, and I learned it last year when we were here for ICast, is I could drink 7 bottles of water and I'll sweat 7 bottles of water out just as fast as I took it in. So, no, it's super cool, man. Final thoughts on just utilizing the unlimited and the inland offshore fishing game.
So people constantly ask me, like, why don't you just get a boat? Wouldn't it be easier, have more space than just a boat? Sometimes. I mean, space is obviously your biggest restrictant on a kayak and storage and everything, but become pretty effective on what I bring for gear to know what I'm going to need for the day. Targeting one thing and not having to bring a lot. And unfortunately, maybe you're not prepared for a different situation, but have a target and goal for the day. And it's just, I was just explaining to someone else, like, it's just a better tool for what I like to do. So like when you said about getting places, a lot of the water we fish is less than a foot deep, and you just physically can't fish it with a boat. So, kayak becomes almost your only option. And once you get into it and you do it, it's very peaceful. It's very, it's a different experience. And yeah, I don't know. I just fell in love with it. So, and like I said, the unlimited I was really excited. I was, partially involved with watching the development of that and everything and getting to have some input on it. And super excited. So, with that kayak and,
right on. Yeah, right on, man. I mean, the drainage thing is huge, I know, for you guys. And I mean, they really hit it out of the park when they designed the deep channel system, the extra scupper plugs, which is huge compared to the F12, right. And a lot of guys rant and rave about it. So, Jordan, I appreciate you sitting down, chatting with us. Guys, gals watching, we'll be back at 1 o'clock. We got these River Wolf Legacy T-shirts on. 1 o'clock, talk about our man River Wolf. We've been given updates on his status through all the Unlimited podcasts. He's a huge part of the team, and he's very much missed here at ICast 2022. He was here last year, and it was like right after that is when he started going through some of his health problems. So a bunch of the team guys are going to get around. We're going to share some River Wolf stories and why he has a legacy if you don't know who River Wolf is. And we'll go from there. But we'll see you guys back here about 1 o'clock at the New Canoe booth here at ICast 2022. Thanks, guys.